Hello, this is Nitin Dahad with the Times, and I'm talking to Mostafa Emam, who's the CEO and founder of a company called Incize. Mostafa, hello.
Hi, Nitin. How are you doing?
I'm good. Before we go into it, we're going to talk a little bit about our observations on what's going on in the Middle East with the big announcements in recent weeks, but some context in the semiconductor industry. But before we do that, just tell me a little bit about what you do.
Hi. So my name is Mostafa. I'm, as I said, as you said, I'm founder and CEO of Incize. I started this adventure 11 years ago, right after my PhD here in Belgium from the Catholic University in Louvain-la-Neuve, and then we started Incize to bridge between the research center's knowledge and the industry for RF devices. So we do a lot of characterization and modeling and technology enablement for the whole value chain from materials all the way to foundries and IDMs.
And so you're working a lot with all the leading RF designs
we do.
that are happening in Europe.
We work with more
Europe
than
and worldwide.
Yeah, we work with more than 50 leaders in this RF ecosystem, and a lot in Europe, in US, and in Asia as well. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the big buzz over the last week and a half has been around the US deals in the Middle East, and they've been mostly on AI and data centers, and very much like the Humane project in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
And then the deals in Qatar and UAE.
Indeed.
I mean, there's that big noise, but what's happening that you see on the semiconductor industry? And for example, you were just a few months ago at the GSA event in Egypt, and there was the conference in Saudi Arabia on semiconductors as well, just a couple of weeks ago. What are you seeing, drilling down? Because I think there's a lot, which people are not sort of seeing what's underneath.
Yeah, I do agree. I think there's a lot behind the scenes. I think what happened last week, or in this visit of Trump to the region, is like a cherry on the top of the cake, because there has been build up for this for many years. As I mentioned to you, Nathan, before, so there is a big ecosystem, fabulous design houses that started in Cairo, in Egypt already, more than 30 years ago, and then it built up, and now the whole region is building towards this. I do know there is a lot of investments in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in Oman, and also in Emirates towards building a very solid semiconductor infrastructure and business. By definition, they start by the fabless. You don't need a lot of infrastructure there, but there is already a big fabless ecosystem in Cairo, and now in Riyadh, and moving on also in Oman, and then in Qatar. We know that there is a lot of investments. We have been approached also for some of these trials or movement towards building a real ecosystem in this area.
No, I mean, people might say, yes, okay, those are good words, but I think I also have experience working with companies like Silicon Vision in the past, Derek, who no longer,
yes.
but he sold his company, was it to Cadence?
Silicon Vision is still there.
Okay, but there are many companies like that, aren't there?
Yeah, indeed. In Cairo, for example, because that's the longest, I would say, history in this case, there's a lot of big companies well established, like, as you mentioned, Cadence, there's at some point Intel, Synopsys is there, MediaTek just announced with GSA. You mentioned GSA. Actually, GSA was the big announcement for MediaTek to put a big center in Cairo after a long history with Infinilink, was another company which was working with MediaTek. And so what I see is a real potential to build a real ecosystem. Why? You have the investment, you have a good infrastructure, and you have a big pool of talents. So there is more than 45,000 engineers graduating in Cairo alone every year. So that's because I know better. But in the whole area, there is a lot of talents coming out, and the universities are racing towards even creating more and more in this area.
And kind of like, how do you utilize that talent? Rather than them going off to Europe and the US and Asia, you can use them locally, and that's kind of
Indeed.
What they're trying to do now, aren't they?
I think they have been eager and aspiring to have something local to do, and I know personally a lot of talented engineers moving out of Europe and US back to the region because it's closer to family, and but I think there is a high potential for big foundries to start already in this area, in this Middle East area. There is the infrastructure needed for such investment, electricity, water, and so on. And we have the purest sand in the world, in Egypt. So there is a lot to use there. But most of the talents, the pool, and people who can really build up on this.
And I think you can't say, but I think that there's talks about a foundry already setting up, a large foundry already setting up in, was it in which country?
In Saudi Arabia.
Okay, yeah.
So
Yes.
I think they have been approaching people. I think, as I said, it was a build-up, so they have been approaching people to reach the point where they can announce big things. So today it's more commercial deals, but I am sure that this is again the extra shell of a big thing building up in this area.
I mean, with what's happening in Saudi, do you see that as the bigger sort of momentum right now in terms of what semiconductors?
It is a big momentum, and there is a lot of stability economically speaking also in this area. So it is very attractive for big companies to move. I know that, I mean, everybody knows there is a big center of Amazon being built in Riyadh, so they have moved a lot of people from Europe and US to settle down in Riyadh, and big companies, as I mentioned, MediaTek in Cairo. So I think it is moving towards an well-established semiconductor ecosystem. Today it is still fabless, it's still on the soft side, but I think the foundries and the big parts of the fabrication will be moving in very soon.
What are the opportunities for you, or companies like you, maybe who have seen what's going on but don't understand the opportunity there?
We see clearly where our position, because as I said, we are in the technology enablement services on business. So once the technology starts building up there, we will have our presence, of course, because it will be a big opportunity, a big market for us. Big players are moving there. They need to build the new technologies, they need to test it, they need to validate it, and so on. So it is a big opening also for us.
And what about these big AI projects, the big investments? Is that going to, obviously that's going to trickle down to sort of needs for the foundational chip industry. So,
Yeah.
I guess that's good news.
The whole supply chain has to adapt, right? So they cannot continue to just buy chips from outside and people and just software engineers, and they will build data centers. All the value chain or the supply chain will have to adapt and build up together to reach this point. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Mostafa, what else do you want to let our viewers know about what's going on?
First of all, thank you, Nathan, again. And yes, the RF business is one of the biggest motors and driving forces. So I think it will be happening in the Middle East as well. Looking forward for this, and we are in the heart of it, and will be participating in this as well.
Mostafa, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Thank you.